Welcome to another edition of the Low Code Cafe. This is episode number 154 for January 24th, 2024. Today we're going to talk about hierarchical listings and how to build them and what this new experimental view is in our listings module. So I'll be covering that. I am Dale Warner, head of support for Plantain App. I'm joined today as a presenter, Patrick Anderson, technical success manager for Plantain App. We're glad you're here. This is an event that we do every 2 weeks. It's a bi-weekly event, and it's intended to keep you abreast of the changes and goings on at Plantain App, and also dig into a particular aspect of low coding. So week by week, we continue to add to our repertoire of training materials, and so there's hundreds of hours of training material out there on our YouTube channel. Because all of these are recorded and placed on our YouTube channel, youtube.com/plantainapp. So we encourage you to sign up for, subscribe to those and to set the alarm bell so that you know when we post new episodes. Today we'll be doing this agenda. I'll be talking a little bit about what's going on from the trenches of support, and then we'll dive right in. The biggest portion of what we'll do will be our hands-on low-code development, where we'll dive into these hierarchical listings. We encourage you to engage with us, so use the chat feature of Zoom or the question and answer section. You can raise your hand if you want to talk, but when it's all over with, also you're encouraged to use the feedback form. That link will be on the clipboard here in a little bit, but also it's in the emails that we send to you. So let us know what you thought, what you'd like to see another time. Just by way of housekeeping, we have this is presented bi-weekly, and normally the next episode would fall on September 7th, but we are going to be skipping forward 1 week. So the next live webinar is going to be February 14th. That is because on February 7th and 8th, the DNN Summit is going on. DNN is the underlying platform for Plantain App, and we encourage you to participate in that, and we will be as well. So during this hour, 2 weeks from now, I'll be presenting a topic on AI. It's not particularly Plantain App related, but it is going to be, I think, of use to the DNN community, and Bogdan has one as well. So we will be presenting at DNN Summit and encourage you to attend. In our From the Trenches segment today, this is the spot where we normally announce hotfixes. We've been in version 1.25 for a very long time, many months, and we've released 78 hotfixes over that time period. In these last 2 weeks, we've released 0. We are working furiously to get version 1.26 published, and part of that is that there's a slowdown on hotfixes as we get this out the door. So be watching for the release in these next few weeks. Since we don't have hotfixes to talk about, I thought I'd take a minute just to talk about a general direction that we're taking with the product, and that is to improve upgrade reliability. So this is finding its way into our installers, I think from version maybe 1.22 and onwards, but we'll be doing it going forward from this point. And that is that it's important that Plantain App is made up of many components, and there's, in addition to installing components when an upgrade happens, there's also some scripts that run, and they have to run in a particular order, and in order to correctly be installed. And we found that in some cases, DNN is restarting prior to having all the scripts in place. And this would be happening, for example, if you're doing an update on a production site and you're still getting hits to it during the upgrade process, that the DNN may be starting before we're done doing the upgrade, and so that timing issue can cause problems. And we like to to eliminate the problems that we see. I especially, because I certainly don't want to have the support channel blow up when we have a problem with upgrades. So getting this right is important. So we're making some changes that block access to the site while the upgrade process is going on, and then as soon as the upgrade process is complete, that we quit blocking and allow the site to go back to normal operation. So hopefully this change that again, we're introducing it now in all of our versions, even past versions, because we've figured out that this is a better upgrade experience, but going forward as well, we'll have that. So hopefully that'll add some stability to the upgrade and reliability of the upgrade process. So you shouldn't see much difference in that in terms of visually, but hopefully that will improve the experience a little bit. In addition to this event that we run bi-weekly, the Low Code Campfire happens every Friday, and that's a weekly event, and it happens at the same hour, 10 a.m. Central Time. And usually it's an event that I usually host. Patrick will be hosting it this week, so you should come and heckle him a little bit. But the Low Code Campfire is more of a conversational format. It's a really great group of Plant and App users that show up week by week, and we encourage you to join us in that. It's an opportunity for you to hear about the struggles that others are having and maybe offering suggestions, or to share the struggles that you're having in your low code development. And so rather than just struggling through a particular issue, we often see things that we get your problem shared and talked about, and tangible solutions issued. We also cover some of these other features more in depth, so it's a good hour to spend with us. And if you can't spend it live, those two are out on YouTube. In this episode, we've got some links, and Patrick has already put them on the chat for me. Thank you very much. So look in the chat and you can see all these, but you can register for Low Code Campfire in advance. You can get access to our link to the YouTube channel. Our community portal's on there also. This is a great place to get questions answered. You can ask questions on the community portal, and both our support team and our community pay attention to that, and oftentimes you'll get an answer from to particular issues that you're having. So great place to post a general issue. And then that feedback form that I mentioned, you can get to that as well. And since DNN Summit is going on, and we were talking about that a little earlier, there's the link to dnnsummit.org. You can go out there and register for that. So we encourage you again to do that. So with that, we will dive right into our low coding for today. And so we're going to be talking about building hierarchical listings with Plant and App. So first of all, what is this hierarchical listing? And this basically is a picture of it, but let's dive into what it really looks like. This is a view that we've added to our listings module, and it's still considered experimental, meaning it might change a little bit over time, but we already have it in use with clients, and it is something that if you have a need for it, I encourage you to take advantage of it. So let's take a look at what that might look like. This is the preparation site that I did for this today. And so this is exactly what we're going to be building today. And this is what it's going to look like when we're done. So this is a regular listing. It's got our data for a fictional company, and we have transactions and amounts and locations and amounts and things like that. And so this would be this is a normal data view listing. If we flip to hierarchical view, it now turns more into a drill down. So we start with the top level of our company, Fashion Fiesta. We open up and we see now we've got the Northeast and the Southeast divisions. And as we drill down, we can see that the Northeast has Boston, but it also has New York. And if we continue to drill down, we can see that in New York, there's a Central Park store as well as a Times Square store. And then we can get to individual transactions. So rather than looking at the data, when there's a relationship, when there's parent records that have children, this sales drill down, this hierarchical view gives you a nice view into this in a more logical way. So this is exactly what we're building. It has some features. We have some collapse all to bring it all the way closed. It has an expand all that you can use to get all the nodes of this view open. You can have buttons on it, and I've implemented a button. So for example, if we wanted to see what this Central Park transaction number 1 was, we can click on it and it can interact with other forms on the page or other listings on the page. In this case, I'm just doing a detail view, but now you could set that up for edit or to initiate some other kind of process. So you can jump from your hierarchical view into other things. So that's hierarchical view. That's where we're going. So let's start building that. And so the overview of what we're going to do today. We're starting from scratch, like most of our sessions. We want you to be able to follow along and duplicate this, and so you'll be able to duplicate it. I'm going to do the development on our Campfire website, campfire.plantanapp.com. And so if you participate in the Campfire website, you'll be able to get in the Campfire events on Friday, you'll be able to get access to it and be able to see exactly how it's coded and refer back to it. So another great reason to participate in Campfire. Anyway, we're going to start from scratch, and we'll create and populate a data table with some data for that has a hierarchical nature. And then we're going to display that in a standard listing in a data view, so so we can see the data, and then go on to turn on the hierarchical view and make the few changes necessary to make that work. And if we succeed at that and still have time left, we'll go on to add a detail form and link that hierarchy view to the detail, just as I showed you in my example. So that's the path. That's where we're going. So we're going to use the exact same data that I just showed you. This fashion fiesta I had some data made up by, I always use Chat GPT these days for a lot of things. And so I used AI to create some test data, and that's the data that we'll be using. It's going to have properties of an ID code, a name, a description. If the record has a parent ID, then the ID of the parent and a dollar amount. And all those are going to be text fields except for money. So the amount, which will be a money field. So let's start out by doing that. The only preparation that I've done, and let's get this, I'm going to get this one out of the way. This is the one that's already been completed, my starting spot. We're on campfire.plantanapp.com, and the only work that I've done to get ready for this is that I have created an empty page, this Cafe 154 hierarchy view page. So all the stuff that we do today will be put in underneath this page, and you'll be able to find it after the fact. So what we're going to do is to go to our configuration page, entities, and we'll create a new entity. This will be the data table that's going to hold this. I'm going to put it in we won't assign a namespace today. The name, what we're going to call this, is sales report. So the data is going to have to do with sales report, and the plural will say sales reporting. And this is going to be displayed in our menu, and I'm going to just put it under that page that I just created. Which is called this one here, the hierarchy view page. So that's where it's going to appear on the page structure. And then in terms of data, it's going to have a variety of properties. So the first property that it's going to have is ID code. As I'm working here under on the campfire.plantanapp.com, I just want to point out we've installed a customization here on this one, so it's a slightly non-standard view. We've got this show default properties function that isn't part of the core product, but rather something that's been added by one of our customers. So I wanted to keep the confusion down if you're following along, that we have all these default properties and they're still present here, but because of this customer add-on, we can hide those, so we'll get them out of the way. Anyway, there's ID code, there's name, there's description, parent ID, and amount. And the amount is going to be in a money field format. And again, the idea here is as we get these records, wherever they're coming from, if an item belongs to another, so if the New York store belongs to a particular region, then the parent ID is going to be the region, and they keep bubbling up in that way. So it establishes this parent-child relationship between the individual records of this table. We're going to say that our ID code is the display name property. That'll be the hyperlink if you're using our default created forms. You'll see that in just a second. And for permissions, I'm going to make this so that anybody can see all entries, and that just kind of permissive. We're really not concerning ourselves today with permissions. And so we'll save that. So that's going to create the table that we're going to use for data, and it has all these properties that we talked about. The next step that we're going to do is we're going to create a utility page and import some data into that, because I don't want to type it all. So we'll create a little import functionality, and that might be useful for some of you as well. So this this sales report has saved as an entity. And now if we go back over to the front of our site and refresh this page, we should be able to find under this that we now have sales reporting as a page underneath it. And so sales reporting has been created. We could create new records, but instead we want to, I'm going to build a utility page that allows us to do the import. So through pages, I'm going to add a page underneath this called utility. I'm just going to call it import. It doesn't really matter what we call it. And add it. And we will use, there's lots of different ways to go here, but I am going to use an action form to build an import utility. So we select action form, place it on the page. We will manage it. Start out with a blank form. We're just going to give it a name, import form. I have some preferences. Besides naming things, I like to have my labels on the top, so I'll set that up as well. But this import form is going to be something like this. We'll have a large text field that's going to have some JSON that we're going to put into it. So I am just going to call this field JSON. This isn't really in final form. This is if you were doing a import utility that was going to be used over and over again, maybe you'd be a little bit more formal with the way it looks. But just going to have an import, a field that has our JSON, and then we'll have a button that says import. So you put in some JSON into the field, you click the import button, and it's going to import the data. When this button gets clicked, we want to do a couple of things. So the first thing is that we want to create a list from JSON. So a list gives us something that we can iterate over. So this JSON is going to be in an array, and we can walk through each thing in the array and do something with it. So we will, the JSON that we want to process is the one that came in on the form, the JSON form field up above here. And the result of this, we're creating a list, so the result of it is going to be something, we're going to call it JSON list. Doesn't matter what we call it, but this will give us access to the list so that we can do something with it. The next thing we want to do is walk through, we're going to use a for each list entry action. This lets us do something with every item that's on the list. So the list that we want to process is the JSON list. And for every item that we get, actions will be executed on each entry in the list. So however many items there are, we want to do something with each one. And the thing that we want to do is to create a new sales report record. So that's going to be the import. So sales report is the table, and we have this nice action, create new sales report. And so here's the fields that we've defined, and we just want to process them in. So each record here, we're going to process in. So the ID code is going to be from our JSON list, the actual field, and you'll see it in a minute, the field name in that JSON that I have to work from is going to be ID. So we're taking the ID and putting it into the ID code field. And then the value that's in name will go into the name field. Value. The rest of these all match up. So just this will make a little bit more sense when you can see the JSON that I'm working with. I should have showed you that in the first place. So this is going to create a record. This output token would be the record ID, and we don't really care about the record ID for this purpose. And then just to know that it's done, after we execute this action to add it and process through that whole list, I'm going to add another one that is going to be I'm going to do it as an error message. This could be a toast message or whatever, but I want to just display a message like you're done. So we'll say there were, and in my JSON list, there's a property called count. So I can just say there were 12 records processed, however many. Just to give confirmation that the thing got done. Okay, so that's our importer. And so if nothing else, I hope this encourages you that you can get a lot done in a hurry, because here in 10 minutes we can write an importer. So let's see what the JSON is going to look like here. So we've got our form, it's got JSON, we've got an import, and the test data that we're going to be using is this JSON array. So you can see it starts as an array. It has a number of elements. So there's an ID, a name, a description, and a parent. The top level one, Fashion Fiesta, doesn't have a parent. That is the highest level one in the item, but all the other ones point to a parent. So the parent of Fashion Fiesta Northeast is FF001, which is this one. So this kind of establishes that parent-child relationship. So we have all these records, and let's run the importer and see if it works. Said it processed 12 records. By the way, if you have a ton of records, 12 happens very fast. 2 million might take a little while. There might be a better technique than iterating through all of them, but this works for smaller, hundreds, thousands of records data sets. So good. So our importer said it worked. If we go up to the sales reporting page, we can now see our default listing has all of our data loaded. Remind you, if you have questions along the way, put them on the chat or the question and answer. Patrick will bring them to my attention. So this gets us through this slide. We created this utility page and we did the import. The next thing that we want to do, oh, and we executed the import and we verified that it looks good. So we're going on, and now we're going to start on our sales drill down page. We want, I'm going to build a listing for this from scratch. And at first, it's just going to start out being a normal listing. We're going to select the data out of that. So let's take a look at what the SQL might need to be. I don't have access to the SQL console here. Never mind, we'll not do that. This Campfire site is installed our not yet released versions and have a little problem with SQL console, so we won't get into that. We'll just do it. Okay. So my intention is that the hierarchy view that we're going to create is going to be placed here on this page, the top level of this tree that we're working on. So we'll add a new listing. Listing modules are called action grids. So I'm going to click action grid, place it on the page. And actually, I want to move this over here because after a while, we're going to have something on the right, that left-right layout. So we'll just start here with it that way. We'll open up our settings and get started. The first thing that listings always want to know is where's the data coming from? Let me find my listing. Sure I don't wander off into the weeds. So the data source that I'm choosing to use is a SQL select, which means we have to select data out of the sales report table. We could potentially use the sales report data source, but in a little while we're going to have to deal with this parent-child relationship, and so we'll just start out by using SQL. And could be something as simple as this: select star from app.sales report, the table that we created, and we have to give it a ID column, which is the ID code. That's what we want to use for that. And potentially we might want to sort it, and I'm going to go ahead and add a sort here. So we'll do it by name and ID code. But by selecting this out, we can save it, and now we can get a look at our data fields. We can also name this thing. So this is going to be called our sales drill down listing. At least that's what it's going to be eventually. But we can add some fields to it. So for example, there is the ID code and description and parent and name and amount. All those are the fields that we just we're working with. All the rest of these are the core ones. Maybe you may or may not care about the create date and things like that, but those could be added to if you wanted to. And I'm going to rearrange these into an order that makes sense for me. So there's ID code and name. We have, we'll put the amount as the last thing here. Sure, we can add some formatting here to this, for example, formatted as money. But that's going to give us our data just in a, by default, it's going to be a data table view. And so we get this kind of normal, if you're familiar at all with our listings, this is the layout for our listings and the options that are available. I'm going to change the default to default page size to 50, just so all of our items load. We only have 12, so who cares? But the data table is turned on. There's this new feature. If you haven't used it yet, you might have seen this on applications like Facebook. But if your data takes a long time to load, you can turn on this option, and you'll get a kind of an illustration of what's going to be in the table, a little shadow or foreshadowing of the data, and then when the data loads, it flips. So instead of seeing blankness, you see here's what the column layout or the layout is going to be. So I'll just turn that on just so you can, I don't know if we'll be able to see it here, but we'll give it a try. Worth a mention anyway. So yes, you can see the skeleton. We can also see that I misspelled something, and I have IDE code. Patrick, you were supposed to catch me when I make mistakes. So I'm going to have to fix that.
Missed it.
So we'll go in here and open this sales drill down in a new page, and we'll fix our problem. I like to give Patrick a hard time, by the way. IDE code. Oh, maybe the data was bad. Code. Probably in the sort. There we go. Change the sort. There it is here. I spelled it wrong here, and that made it be a mess. All right, so we fixed that. Refresh. And good. So we have our kind of expected standard listing, and that we could work with and sort and do things with. So we have our data, but it's not in a hierarchical view. All right, let's see where we are. So we made that, and now there's also this, eventually we're going to go on to create edit functionality, and we can do it now, but I don't want to get distracted from hierarchical, so we'll come back to that. Yep, and we'll come back to that as well. I want to go right towards hierarchical view to make sure we get all of this. So now we get to the meat of our problem. We want to display this same data in a hierarchy. So we've got to turn on the hierarchy view, and then we need to set the special view settings for hierarchy view. So let's start by seeing what these are. The views are here, and we have this hierarchy experimental view. If we click on it, we have to turn it on to see the settings. There's special fields that we need to set. So we need an ID, the title that gets displayed on the listing. It needs to understand the parent, and it needs to understand whether or not a particular record has children. So we have all of these available except has children. And for that, we're going to do, this is why we used SQL for this. We can use the SQL view to, the SQL data to figure out whether or not a given record has a child, and then we can use that in our output. So we're not quite ready to turn this on. We're going to go back and make sure that we have a true false field that indicates whether or not any given record has a child. And so this is a little bit of SQL that is going to get this done for us. Rather than, I'm going to do this through the magic of copy and paste. I've got this answer already done, so I'm going to paste it in instead of doing a simple select out of sales report. I am going to use this that I've already prepared. So we still have, instead of saying give me everything from the record, I'm saying the ID code. I also want the name and ID code as a name because I want to be able to display that just to kind of verify that things are working the way that they should. But the description, the amount, the parent ID, all that is still coming from that. But the children thing is getting done by this case when exists end. So everything from here to here is going to end up returning a true or a false and get stored in has children. So that the has children field is going to end up being true or false. The way that it does it is as you're looking at a given record, it is doing a select and looking to see if there are any other records that have a parent ID of this code. So you got to know a little bit about SQL to implement a solution like this, but this is just returning a true false whether something has children. So with that change to SQL, and it's returning a 1 or a 0, true or false, with that change to SQL, we now will have an additional field that has children, and I can add it to the listing and save. And so now we can test out our logic to see if this is doing what we expect. So now we has children as a true false indicator here, and so it says this low level transaction doesn't have any children, so there's no ID codes with, if we were to search, for example, for this code, there, I'm sorry, that's the parent ID. But if we were to search for this individual transaction code, there is only one that has that. There are not any records that have this as a parent. And so we've proven that false to be correct. And then if we look for this code, FF, we can see that there are several that have that as a parent ID. So this true indication is also correct. So we're getting a good indicator, true or false. And then once we have that, we can use it in our hierarchical listing. So now we have everything necessary to turn this on. We go back to our listing and our hierarchy view, we can now turn it on and we have everything we need to fill in these special fields. So the ID code is the ID of this that we want to use, the unique ID. The title field is, we'll use name as the title field. That's the text that's going to show up. The parent ID is linked to the parent ID. And the has children is linked to our has child field, the has children field that we just created. And so with that, notice that we have two views available here. The data table and the hierarchy are both turned on. So when we make this change and refresh the page, and I'm going to get out of edit mode here, but so that those lines go away. But now we have this data table view and hierarchy view, so we can switch between them. And since data table appears first, that's the default. So it starts out as data table, but if we click hierarchy view, now we get this hierarchy view that we were hoping for. And So now we have drill down. We can go to the northeast or the southeast. We can go into New York and see the transactions in Times Square. And now we see the transactions. Okay, notice that we didn't have any expand all button, so let's get that done. There's this enable expand and collapse all, so I'll turn that on. And there's another feature here, enable drag and drop, and I'm not going to tackle this today, but there is the ability to, if you turn this on, it gives you all the tools you need as a low-code developer to be able to come in here and drag these things around and move them to a new spot so you can interactively manipulate your structure. It's beyond the scope of what I can get done today, but just wanted to mention this available. So now I've refreshed, I go back to my hierarchy view, and now we have expand all, so we can get everything all at once or collapse all. So you can either drill down one at a time, and that that has children is used to determine whether we show that with a plus sign or not. So that's why that's so important. Patrick, keep me on track. Anything that I've skipped so far?
No, it's looking good.
Okay, good.
Great.
So we enabled that view and we determined dynamically if a record has children. That was the SQL statement. And then we set up those special fields so we get the hierarchy view, and so you now see it, and so you've seen how it's implemented. There's now some other things that we can talk about. You know, now that you have a hierarchy view, what do you do with it? We can work with it in JavaScript, and then we can also work with it with low code. And I'm going to start with low code. So let's go back to where we started today. We could build a form over here so that when you click one of these things, that it loads the form, and that's kind of that. Whether you're talking about a form or a listing or a pop-up or whatever, it's going to make sense that you're going to want to do something with the things that are here on this list. If it's not just for display purposes, you're going to want to be able to activate it. So let's do that. So we're going to take a little detour here and build a detail form. And let me find that in my bag of tricks over here in my left monitor. That pretty quickly. So we will, first it's got to just be, we got to add a form to a field. So we're going to add an action form to the page rather. We'll add it over here and begin to manage it. This is going to start out as a blank form. And we're going to call this our detail form. And as you know, it must be set up with the labels on the top. So that gets us started. We're going to have a bunch of fields, and they're all going to be the same name as named the same, just for simplicity, as what we have in our data table. So that and many of these are just going to be a text box. So we're going to start out with a text box for ID code, and let's see, what's the easiest way to do that? Yeah, we'll just start with ID. Let's start with ID code just to kind of prove that we can get it working, and then we'll do two. So we'll do ID code, and then we'll also I'll duplicate that and do a name field. If we have time, we'll go back and do all the rest of them. But the idea is that these two fields are going to appear on this form and be filled in automatically when you do something with the hierarchy view. So let's see what that looks like. We have our listing on the left. We don't yet have any buttons to work with that thing. So we're going to need a button. And then once we have a button, we're going to need to react to that button. So let's start with the button. So in our sales drill down, just like any other kind of listing, you have access to create buttons. And let me find where we are here. So let's say that our idea is that we're going to edit, and so we'll have a button, an item button that is for editing. I'll just put the word edit on it. I'm going to make it stand out, so I'm going to make it be our primary color. It doesn't matter what style you pick, but this is going to make it be very visible. And when it's clicked, we're going to want to do something. And so what I want to do is use the initialize form and stop execution. So it's just going to do this one thing for me and then stop working. The form that we want to initialize is our detail form, and we're going to pass a query string parameter on it that is going to be an ID code, and the value that we're going to pass is ID code. So this is saying we're taking the ID code from this current record, whatever button they're clicking the edit button on, and we're passing it as a parameter to the detail form so that the detail form can react to it. So very simple. And that's as far as we're going to go here at the moment, just to see that it's that we get a button. So now on our regular regular view, we get it as an edit button here. And then if we look at the hierarchy view, we get it as an edit button next to whatever record. So when you have to hover it in order to see the button, but the button's there, and you can click it, and it, because we haven't programmed this part of it yet, it doesn't do anything. But let's finish that up. So we will open our detail form in a new tab so we can work with that. And so when this form gets initialized, we want to capture that event and get the data onto the screen. So that can be done in one moment, in an event on the way in. And so the easiest way we will do this as a SQL query and just look up that ID code. So we'll run a SQL query. The SQL query is going to be something like get select all from the app sales report table, and then we want it where the ID code in that table equals the ID code being passed in. And it's always nice to use these bind tokens. So ID code is going to, we want it to get the one that's coming in off the query string. So we'll use get, not just, get colon ID code. So this matches that that's being passed in on the button. The button says pass the ID code of the row into the form, and the form is saying I'm going to get that and use it in a SQL query to get a result of, I'm going to call it sales report. Doesn't matter what we call it, but this is going to give us access to all of our fields. So with that sales report, I can now say, I can start consuming that over here, saying the initial value of this is going to be sales report ID code. And for the name field, we want to pull as an initial value sales report name. So it'll pull it out of the record and put it onto the form. So that's it for those two fields. If we refresh now, we can, off of our main listing, we can pick one of these, like this FF01 Boston, click it, and the form initializes with Fashion Fiesta Boston. In the same way, if we go to a hierarchy view and find any transaction and say edit, we get that same functionality on both views. Good. So let's do a little bit more work in our detail form to get everything out there, and then will be more of a complete solution. So we can clone this name field and do description, and we're going to initialize it from the sales report description, and then we can keep cloning. See the next one is amount, so we can't clone that one so much. Let's do a currency type field, and we're going to call this amount, and we're going to get the initial value from sales report, and yeah, that'll do it. So we're getting these values from the record. And if we do it for hierarchy, same way. I'm going to expand all and let's see, do it for this New York transaction here. So from there, you can see where you could launch, right? You could add buttons over here to launch other processes, or you could make an edit if you want to allow the changing of amounts, whatever, you could write that back to the underlying table. There's all kinds of things that you can do once you have access to the data. So it's just how you display it and what you do with it afterwards. We happen to do edit, but you could do processing, right? Any kind of activity that you wanted to do on a button. All right. So I'm going to do a couple of cleanup things here for a moment. In our sales drill down, the data table, I really had this left on just initially just to help us visualize the data and to see it and to know that we're in good shape. But we could either turn it off or just move it, maybe move hierarchy view up so that becomes the default. So that's a nice little cleanup thing that we do. Now when we come to this page, both are available, but it starts out with our preferred view of the hierarchy view. So that's one thing we can do to clean up. I wanted to talk about too that it's possible to interact with this with JavaScript as well. So in the definition of the hierarchy view, there's this on item click logic. And so any kind of, if there were for the most part, I'm a low coder, right? Not a JavaScript coder. And so being able to create a button that it reacts to is the easiest thing for me. But some people like to do JavaScript. And there is a syntax that you can use. You can, let me show, for example, we could do those same kinds of things that we already did using JavaScript. So one thing thing just to prove kind of that it works and how it works, let's do an alert. So an alert message, anytime you click, anytime that runs, it just pops up a window in your browser and says whatever it is that you want to say. There is this tells you that you have access to item. That's the item that was selected. And so you can get the item ID. And so I'm going to do that item ID. And so this very simple JavaScript is just going to, whatever we click, pop up the alert. So we can at least see how this would interact. So now when we refresh the page, this JavaScript is present. So what you'll find is now anytime you click on an item at all, that JavaScript is going to run. And oh, it didn't pop up anything, so I don't know why not. I'll have to dig into that a little bit. But from an interface standpoint, notice that you don't have to click on a particular button that appears wherever. This JavaScript runs anytime this highlighted item is clicked anywhere. And so that's if that's the interaction that you're trying for, that could be most useful. Let's see if I can. I didn't end up getting that saved. That's why it didn't work. That was item.d and save. And let's see if that works now. There it is. So we have ff-ne. It matches the one that I clicked. If I click some other transaction like this one anywhere in the item, it pops up that ID. So you could use that ID in JavaScript in any different way that you want. So that's just another way that you can go. Okay.
Just add there real quick, Dale, that other fields are available too. It's a little tricky getting them, but you can get the other fields too. So
yes, I saw that. ID is the easiest one to get to. And so but you're absolutely correct. And so it sounds like a support ticket if you want to get to those other. Thanks. And so those could be used, for example, with our DNN SF actions, the JavaScript actions to open pop-ups or change tabs or manipulate listings. There's any number of things that you can do, but most of that's available through low code as well. So that's probably that's certainly my first choice, but it's available as JavaScript. Okay, so what did we get done today? Well, we kind of explored what the hierarchical data has to look like. There has to be a parent ID, this parent-child relationship. We create a listing just like we create any other listings, except it has to have some field with a true or false. We called it has children, but it has to have some field with a true or false that says whether or not that any particular node has a child. And then you set the special fields to the values that you want displayed, and now that view works with nodes that expand, or you can expand all nodes, and you can interact with them. You can add buttons to them. You can do stuff with it. So it's just another way to visualize your data and to work with it. So if you're working with something that has parent-child relationships, you should consider hierarchical views. Wonderful. So that was what we were aiming at. We've come to the end of our hour. We're glad that you joined us for this. And again, we hope to see you at DNN Summit in 2 weeks, or in 3 weeks, we'll resume. This will be February 14th. We'll resume our next Low Code Cafe. Happy low coding, y'all. See you next time.